The applause thundered through the conference room like a victory march I'd never get to hear for myself. Bradley Cole stood at the front, holding that silver trophy high above his head, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. The plaque read, "Innovation of the Year," in bold letters that caught the light from every angle. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I might be sick right there on the polished floor. "This campaign changed everything for our clients," Bradley announced, his voice smooth and practiced. "It repositioned our brand in ways we never imagined possible. The campaign I created. Every word, every concept, every late night I'd poured into making it perfect." I stood 3 feet away from him, my hands shaking around a paper cup that was slowly collapsing under my grip. 2 weeks ago, he'd looked me straight in the eye and said my idea wasn't aligned with company strategy. Now he was taking bows for it while everyone in that room applauded his genius. He caught my eye for just a second. No guilt. No shame. Just that same practiced smile that said he owned everything in this building, including my work. That's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, cold break that changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Nick Halpern, and I'm 32 years old. For 3 years, I worked as a marketing strategist at Pinnacle Communications in Chicago. I wasn't the loudest person in the room or the one who always had something clever to say in meetings. I was the guy who showed up early, stayed late, and actually cared about the work. The guy who believed that good ideas and hard work would eventually get recognized. I was wrong about that last part. Bradley Cole became my boss 18 months ago when the company promoted him to Senior VP of Marketing. He had the kind of resume that made executives excited: business school at Northwestern, 5 years at a top agency in New York, connections that opened doors most people couldn't even find. He wore expensive suits and talked about synergy and disruption like they were real things that mattered. At first, I thought working under him would be my big break. Maybe some of his success would rub off on me. Maybe he'd mentor me, push my career forward, help me climb the ladder I'd been stuck on for too long. Instead, he taught me something else entirely. He taught me that some people don't climb ladders. They just push other people off them. 3 months before that awards ceremony, I'd pitched an idea called the Horizon Project in a strategy meeting. It was a complete digital overhaul designed to revive our brand's image, which had been slowly dying for years. I'd spent 6 weeks researching, building mock-ups, and creating presentations that showed exactly how it would work. The campaign would use storytelling to connect with younger audiences while maintaining credibility with our existing clients. It was bold, creative, and different from anything we'd done before. Bradley sat at the head of the conference table that day, scrolling through his phone while I presented. I could see his reflection in the window behind him, his face blank and bored. When I finished, he didn't even look up. "Too risky," he said, his thumb still moving across his screen. "The timing's not right. Try something simpler, something we know works." The room went silent. A few people glanced at me with sympathy, but nobody spoke up. That's how it worked at Pinnacle. Bradley's word was law, and questioning him was career suicide. I gathered my materials and walked out, feeling like I just wasted 6 weeks of my life. But here's the thing about being ignored too many times: you learn to protect yourself. I didn't delete those files. I saved everything to my personal drive, archived every version with timestamps, kept every email and every note. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival instinct from years of watching other people's ideas disappear into the void without credit. That habit saved my career. Or maybe it destroyed Bradley's. Depends on how you look at it. 2 weeks before the award ceremony, I was searching for an old client file on our shared server when I stumbled across a folder I'd never seen before. The name caught my eye immediately: the Horizon Initiative. Close enough to my original pitch that my pulse started racing. I clicked it open. My hands went cold as I scrolled through the presentation deck inside. Every slide was mine. The tagline I'd written. The visuals I'd designed. The strategy I'd spent weeks developing. Even the typos from my early draft were still there, copied word for word. The only difference? The author's name at the bottom of every page. Bradley Cole. I sat there staring at my computer screen for 10 minutes, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just inspiration or building on my idea. This was theft. Clean, simple, undeniable theft. My first instinct was to march into his office and confront him. Demand an explanation. Make him admit what he'd done. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of how he dismissed me in that meeting, how he hadn't even bothered to look up from his phone. Maybe it was knowing that his word would always carry more weight than mine. Or maybe it was something colder than anger. Something that whispered, wait. Watch. Gather evidence. I took screenshots of everything. Every slide, every file name, every metadata timestamp that proved I'd created these files months before he submitted them. I saved them to an encrypted folder on my personal laptop, then sent copies to my private email account. I even wrote down the exact path where I'd found the files, in case they disappeared later. Then I closed the folder and went back to work like nothing had happened. The next morning, Bradley called me into his office. His door was always glass, everything visible, everything performative. He liked people to see him in power. "Nick, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His voice was warm, friendly even. "I wanted to talk to you about something." I sat, keeping my face neutral. "I know you've been feeling frustrated lately," he continued, leaning back in his leather chair. "I know you've been putting in long hours, working hard. I see that. But I need you to understand something important about how this company works." He paused, waiting for me to ask what that was. I didn't give him the satisfaction. "This company rewards leadership, not just ideas," he said. "Anyone can have a concept. But it takes vision and experience to know which ideas are worth pursuing and how to execute them at the highest level. That's what separates people like me from people like you." The words landed like punches. People like me. People like you. "So here's my advice," he said, sliding a coffee cup across his desk toward me. "Be a team player. Support the people who know what they're doing. Do that, and someday there'll be room for you at the top." I looked at the coffee cup but didn't touch it. His smile faltered slightly, then recovered. He thought my silence meant acceptance. Defeat. He had no idea what was actually happening behind my eyes. That afternoon, Maya from the design team found me in the break room. She was one of the few people at Pinnacle who actually cared about doing good work instead of playing politics. "Nick, can we talk?" she asked quietly, glancing at the security camera in the corner. We stepped into the stairwell where nobody ever went. "I heard what Bradley's doing with your campaign," she whispered. "He told the executives it was completely his vision. He's presenting it to the board next month as proof he deserves a promotion. Everyone thinks you were just support staff on the project." My jaw tightened. "Did he say that specifically?" "He said you helped with research but lacked the strategic thinking to see it through." Her eyes filled with anger on my behalf. "It's complete garbage, Nick. Everyone who actually works with you knows you're brilliant. But he's rewriting history, and nobody's stopping him." She put her hand on my arm. "Don't let him see you're angry. That's what he wants. He feeds on making people emotional so they make mistakes." I nodded slowly. "I won't give him that satisfaction." And I meant it. Anger was loud and obvious. What I needed was cold precision. The following week, my quarterly performance review appeared in my email inbox. I opened it expecting the usual generic praise and suggestions for improvement. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold. Nick demonstrates adequate technical skills but lacks initiative and leadership capabilities. He struggles to think strategically and often requires significant guidance to complete projects. While he is a reliable team member, he does not show the innovative thinking necessary for advancement. Signed by Bradley Cole. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Every sentence was designed to undermine me, to make it seem like I was barely competent. This wasn't just about stealing my campaign anymore. He was systematically destroying my reputation so nobody would believe me if I tried to speak up. He was building a narrative where he was the visionary and I was the mediocre worker who needed constant supervision. And once that story was established in official company documents, it would become truth. I saved the review to my evidence folder. Every piece of documentation that contradicted his lies went into that folder. Every email where I'd led projects successfully. Every compliment from clients. Every timestamp showing I'd created work he later claimed as his own. The folder was growing larger every day. 2 weeks later, Bradley arranged a dinner meeting with our biggest client, Harrison Technologies. They'd hired us 6 months ago to completely rebrand their company, and I'd spent countless hours developing their new identity. It was some of my best work, and the client loved it. Bradley insisted I attend the dinner. At first, I thought maybe he was finally going to give me some credit. I should have known better. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the menus don't list prices. The client's CEO, Thomas Harrison, greeted Bradley with a warm handshake and barely glanced at me. Throughout dinner, Thomas kept praising the rebrand. "Bradley, your vision completely transformed how we see ourselves as a company. The strategic positioning, the messaging, everything. It's genius." Bradley soaked it up, nodding modestly. "I'm glad it resonated with you. These kinds of transformations require seeing the bigger picture, understanding not just what a company is, but what it could become." Every word he spoke was something I'd said in my original pitch. Every concept he explained was mine. I sat there cutting my steak into smaller and smaller pieces, my hands trembling under the tablecloth. When Thomas raised his glass for a toast, praising Bradley's brilliant leadership, I nearly dropped my fork. Bradley stood, accepting the praise with practiced humility. "I have to say, this wouldn't have been possible without my team," he added, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "Not without Nick specifically. Not, Nick created this entire strategy. Just my team, like I was one interchangeable part in his machine." I forced myself to smile and raise my glass. Inside, something fundamental was shifting. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry in the traditional sense. I was calculating. Planning. Seeing the whole board like a chess game where he thought he'd already won. After dinner, I walked home through freezing rain instead of taking a cab. I needed the cold to clear my head, needed the discomfort to sharpen my focus. By the time I reached my apartment, I was soaked through, but my mind had never been clearer. Revenge wasn't about emotion. It was about precision. It was about patience. It was about letting someone think they'd gotten away with something right up until the moment their entire world collapsed. The next morning, I came into work early. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew finishing their rounds. I logged into my computer and started going through old email chains, looking for anything I might have missed. That's when I found it. An email thread from 3 months ago, right after Bradley had rejected my Horizon project pitch in that meeting. The subject line read, "This is gold." He'd forwarded my entire presentation deck to his personal email address. Not just the final version, all of my drafts, all of my notes, everything I'd created. The email included a message to himself, "Save this. Timing isn't right now, but this concept is exactly what we need. We'll revisit in a few months when I can position it properly." Position it properly. He'd been planning to steal it from the very beginning. My heart was hammering as I took screenshots of everything. The original email, the attachments, the timestamps proving these were my files sent from my company account. This wasn't circumstantial evidence. This was proof. I saved everything to my encrypted drive, then sent copies to 3 different email accounts I controlled. If anything happened to one backup, I'd still have the others. Over the next 2 weeks, I became obsessed with documentation. Every email Bradley sent, every meeting he held, every decision he made went into my files. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use all this information, but I knew that when the time came, I needed to have everything. I started replying to his emails in ways that forced him to confirm things in writing. When he'd give me verbal instructions, I'd follow up with messages like, "Just to confirm, you want me to adjust these metrics to show stronger performance, correct?" He'd reply with simple agreements, never realizing he was building his own trap. I also noticed he was getting sloppier. Success had made him arrogant. He stopped double-checking his work, stopped covering his tracks carefully. He assumed nobody was watching closely enough to catch his mistakes. That was his first real error. In the break room one afternoon, he made a joke at my expense in front of half the department. Maybe if Nick thought bigger, he'd be standing up here with me instead of making coffee. Everyone laughed. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Maybe someday." He thought I meant I hope to be like him someday. He completely missed the threat hidden in those 2 words. A week later, an email went out to the entire company. The subject line was, "Leadership Development Opportunity." My pulse quickened as I opened it, thinking maybe this was finally my chance to move up after 3 years of steady work. Instead, I read that Bradley Cole had been selected for an executive leadership program that would fast-track him to vice president within the year. The email praised his innovative thinking and strategic vision, citing the Horizon Initiative as a prime example of his capabilities. My name wasn't mentioned once. I wasn't even shortlisted for consideration. I sat at my desk, staring at that email, feeling something cold and final settle over me. This wasn't just about one stolen campaign anymore. This was about a pattern. A system. Bradley had built his entire career advancement on taking credit for other people's work, and the company was rewarding him for it. That email was my breaking point. Not because it made me angry, but because it made me certain. Certain that he would never stop. Certain that nobody in management would ever hold him accountable. Certain that if I wanted justice, I'd have to create it myself. I forwarded the email to my evidence folder and started planning my endgame. I stopped participating actively in meetings after that. I'd show up, take notes, and observe. Bradley started assigning me more grunt work, things that kept me busy but invisible. He was pushing me further into the background, making sure I stayed irrelevant. I let him. Because every task he gave me, every email he sent shifting blame, every deadline he shortened unreasonably went straight into my documentation folder. He started missing project deadlines and blaming me for not keeping him informed. I'd reply with polite emails referencing the exact messages where I'd warned him about problems weeks in advance. He'd send back short, irritated responses that only dug his hole deeper. "Nick, I need you to take ownership of your mistakes instead of making excuses," one email read. I replied, "I understand. Just to clarify, are you referring to the timeline concerns I raised in my email from March 15th, which suggested we needed 3 additional weeks for quality control?" He responded, "Stop overthinking everything. Just get it done." Every exchange was a nail in his coffin. He just didn't know it yet. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Bradley made his critical mistake. During a late-night rush to meet a client deadline, he accidentally CC'd me on an email chain with Harrison Technologies. I wasn't supposed to be included. He'd been communicating directly with Thomas Harrison for weeks, cutting me out of the project I'd created. The email thread was shocking. Bradley had taken full credit for every aspect of their rebrand, describing in detail how he developed their strategy from scratch. He'd attached campaign files with my name completely scrubbed from the metadata. But that wasn't even the worst part. He'd falsified performance metrics. The campaign results I'd reported honestly, showing strong but realistic growth, had been inflated to make them look extraordinary. He'd changed numbers, manipulated data, and presented false information to make himself look like a miracle worker. I read through those emails 3 times, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about stealing credit anymore. This was fraud. He was lying to clients, manipulating data, and putting the entire company at risk. I forwarded the entire chain to my personal email, then saved everything to my encrypted drive. This was it. This was the ammunition that would end him. The next week, rumors started spreading through the office. Someone had requested a compliance audit. Whispers in the break room suggested the board was concerned about irregularities in client reporting. Bradley called an emergency meeting with our entire department. His face was tight, his usual confidence cracked around the edges. "Listen up, everyone," he said, standing at the front of the conference room. "We need to do some housekeeping. Corporate is conducting a routine audit, and they want our files clean. I need everyone to delete old drafts and emails older than 6 months. Keep only final versions of everything. This is standard procedure." Standard procedure. Right. He was trying to destroy evidence. Everyone else nodded and went back to their desks to start deleting files. I sat at my computer and deleted nothing. Every incriminating email, every stolen file, every piece of evidence stayed exactly where it was in my secure backup. He walked past my desk later that afternoon. "Nick, did you clean out those old files like I asked?" "Absolutely," I lied, meeting his eyes without flinching. "Everything's taken care of." He smiled, satisfied. He had no idea I'd just lied directly to his face for the first time in 3 years. That night, I drafted an email I'd been composing in my head for weeks. It was short, professional, and devastating in its simplicity. "Bradley, I'm reaching out to confirm the instructions you gave during this afternoon's department meeting. You asked the team to delete emails and drafts older than 6 months and to modify client files to ensure consistency with current reporting standards. Could you confirm these instructions in writing for my records? I want to make sure I'm following correct procedure. Thanks, Nick." I stared at that email for 20 minutes before hitting send. This was the point of no return. Once he replied, there would be no walking it back. His response came within an hour. "Yes, that's correct. Keep everything consistent with the narrative we've presented to clients. Make sure all metrics align with what we've reported. This is important for the audit." There it was. In writing. A direct admission that he'd instructed the team to falsify documents and manipulate data. I saved that email in 5 different locations. Then I started preparing my final move. I spent the weekend organizing everything into one comprehensive file. Timestamps showing when I'd created the Horizon project. Screenshots of Bradley's email forwarding my work to his personal account with the "This is gold" message. The stolen presentation deck with my original typos. His performance review calling me unimaginative. Client emails where he'd taken credit for my work. The falsified metrics he'd sent to Harrison Technologies. And finally, his instruction to delete evidence and keep everything consistent with the narrative. It was a complete timeline of fraud, theft, and corporate misconduct. Undeniable. Irrefutable. Devastating. On Monday morning, I came into work early again. My hands were steady as I composed an email to the company's compliance department. I attached my complete evidence file and wrote a simple cover message. "I'm reporting serious concerns regarding data manipulation and false reporting to clients. Attached documentation shows a pattern of misconduct spanning several months. I believe this requires immediate investigation." I CC'd the email to Harrison Technologies' ethics department. They deserved to know they'd been lied to. Then I hit send and waited. The response was faster than I'd expected. Within 2 hours, I received a call from Helena Barnes, the head of corporate compliance. "Nick, can you come to my office immediately?" Her voice was tense. Professional, but tense. I walked through the office, aware of eyes following me. Bradley was in a meeting with HR, his face visible through the glass walls. He looked uncomfortable, but not panicked yet. He didn't know what was coming. Helena's office was on the executive floor, a place I'd rarely visited. She closed the door behind me and gestured to a chair. "These are serious allegations," she said, opening her laptop to show my email. "Before we proceed, I need to verify this information is accurate." I pulled out my tablet and walked her through everything. She took notes, asked questions, and reviewed files for 45 minutes. Her expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "This is much worse than I expected," she said finally. "We'll need to conduct a full investigation. In the meantime, I need you to keep this confidential. Don't discuss this with anyone, especially not with Bradley." I nodded. "I understand." As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The next 48 hours were tense. The office felt different, charged with an energy people couldn't quite identify. Bradley held more closed-door meetings with HR and executives. His assistant looked stressed. Whispers spread through the departments like wildfire. On Wednesday afternoon, I watched through my computer screen as Bradley's author photo disappeared from the company website. One minute it was there under the leadership section, the next it was gone. His name was removed from active projects. His calendar cleared. People started noticing. Conversations stopped when he walked by. The confident stride he usually had through the office was replaced with something stiffer, more defensive. On Thursday morning, I was getting coffee in the break room when I saw 2 security guards walk past with boxes. They headed straight for Bradley's office. Maya appeared beside me, her eyes wide. "Is this because of what you reported?" I didn't answer, just watched through the glass walls as Bradley stood up from his desk, his face pale. The security guards waited while he packed his personal items into the boxes they'd brought. No ceremony. No explanation. Just the quiet, efficient removal of someone who'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. He walked past the break room on his way out, box in his hands. He didn't look at anyone. Nobody clapped. Nobody said goodbye. That afternoon, the senior VP of operations called an emergency all-hands meeting. The conference room was packed, everyone whispering theories about what was happening. Effective immediately, Bradley Cole is no longer with Pinnacle Communications, she announced. "We take all allegations of misconduct seriously, and a thorough investigation has revealed violations of company policy that we cannot overlook. We're committed to maintaining the highest ethical standards." She didn't provide details, but she didn't need to. Everyone had seen him escorted out. Everyone had heard the whispers. After the meeting, people approached me with questions. How much did I know? Had I been involved? I kept my answers vague, professional. "I'm just focused on doing good work," became my standard response. But Maya cornered me in the parking garage that evening. "You did this, didn't you?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I just told the truth." She smiled, something fierce and proud in her expression. "Good. He deserved worse." Maybe he did. But this was enough for me. The following week, Helena called me back to her office. This time, the head of marketing was there too. "Nick, we want to thank you for coming forward," Helena said. "The investigation confirmed everything you reported. Bradley systematically stole work from multiple employees, falsified client data, and instructed staff to destroy evidence. The board takes this extremely seriously." The marketing director leaned forward. "We'd also like to discuss your future here." You've demonstrated integrity and strategic thinking that we value highly. We're prepared to offer you a significant promotion and a role that better reflects your actual contributions to this company." I sat there, absorbing her words. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity. This was everything I'd wanted. But now, sitting in that office, I realized something had changed. I didn't want to work at a place that had let Bradley operate for years before anyone noticed. I didn't want to stay somewhere that only valued me after I'd proven I could destroy someone. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully. "But I need some time to think about what I want next." They looked surprised, but agreed to give me space. I spent the next few days thinking about what actually mattered to me. Not awards or titles or recognition from people who hadn't believed in me when it counted. What mattered was knowing I'd stood up for myself. That I hadn't let someone steal my work and get away with it. On Friday, I submitted my resignation. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. I'd proven what I needed to prove. Now it was time to find somewhere that valued people before they had to fight for basic respect. My last week at Pinnacle was quiet. I wrapped up projects, documented everything for whoever would replace me, and said goodbye to the few people I'd actually connected with. Maya hugged me on my final day. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Somewhere better." She smiled. "You deserve that." As I packed up my desk, I walked past Bradley's old office one last time. It was empty now, being repurposed for someone else. The same chair where he'd told me I lacked leadership material. The same desk where he'd plotted to steal my work. It looked smaller than I remembered. I left Pinnacle Communications on a sunny Friday afternoon in April. I carried one box of personal items and a flash drive containing every piece of work I'd actually created. The building looked the same as it had 3 years ago when I'd started, but everything felt different. In the parking garage, I loaded my box into my car and sat in the driver's seat for a moment. Part of me expected to feel victorious or satisfied. Instead, I just felt tired. And free. Those two things could exist together, I was learning. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. They just announced the Horizon initiative is being discontinued due to ethical concerns. Starting fresh with a new campaign next quarter. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. Bradley's trophy would be meaningless now. The award he'd stolen was being stripped of all recognition, his name forever associated with fraud instead of innovation. I texted back, "Thanks for letting me know." Then I started my car and drove out of that parking garage for the last time. 3 months later, I was working at a smaller agency across town. The pay was similar, but the culture was different. People actually collaborated instead of competing. Ideas were discussed openly instead of being stolen quietly. One morning, my new boss called me into her office. "Nick, I wanted to show you something." She pulled up an industry article on her computer. The headline read, "Pinnacle Communications faces upheaval after executive fraud scandal." The article detailed Bradley's schemes, the falsified data, the stolen work. It mentioned that multiple employees had come forward after the initial investigation, revealing a pattern that went back years. His career was finished. Not just at Pinnacle, but anywhere in the industry. "Did you know about this?" my boss asked. "I was there when it happened," I said simply. She studied my face for a moment. The person who reported him showed a lot of courage. Companies need people like that. I nodded but didn't elaborate. She didn't need to know it was me. The people who mattered already knew. That evening, I was cleaning out old files on my laptop when I found the original Horizon project presentation. I opened it, looking at the work I'd created almost a year ago. It was good work. Creative, strategic, innovative. All the things I'd always known it was. I didn't need a trophy to prove that. I didn't need Bradley's validation or anyone else's approval. The work spoke for itself, and so did my integrity. Outside my apartment window, the sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I closed my laptop and poured myself a drink, finally at peace. Because I'd learned something valuable through all of this: you don't win by shouting the truth. You win by making it undeniable. And when the right moment comes, when someone has built their entire empire on lies and theft, all you have to do is step back and watch it collapse under its own weight. Bradley stole my idea and won an award. But I kept the evidence and ended his career. In the end, that was the only victory that actually mattered.